Okay, so picture this. You're lying in bed, it's like 11:47 p.m. You should absolutely be asleep, and instead you're doing math in your head. Not real math, anxious math. You're trying to remember how much is in your savings account, subtracting what you owe on the car, adding in whatever's sitting in your 401k that you don't really understand, and you're basically trying to answer one question. Am I doing okay? Am I behind? Is there some invisible finish line everyone else seems to know about that I somehow missed the memo on? And then, because it's almost midnight and your judgment is questionable, you open Instagram, and there's some 26-year-old standing in front of a rented Lamborghini talking about how he hit 7 figures before he could legally rent a car. And something in your chest just tightens. Because now the math isn't just anxious anymore, it's comparative. And comparative math at midnight never ends well for anybody. Honestly, I think almost everyone has had that exact moment. That specific flavor of financial insomnia where you're not stressed about a bill, you're stressed about a number that doesn't even really exist yet. Some future net worth you think you're supposed to have hit by now. My name is Rick, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, financial psychology, and why some people seem to move through their financial life with this quiet, steady confidence, while other people, who are often making just as much money, are constantly white-knuckling it, always one bad headline away from panic. And here's the thing I want to walk through with you today, because I think it's going to change how you look at your own numbers. There are basically thousands of net worth milestones that finance content loves to throw at you. Your first 10,000, 50, 100, $500,000, a million, 2 million, 10. It becomes this endless ladder that never stops, and chasing all of them is exhausting and honestly, kind of pointless. But underneath all that noise, there are really only 5 milestones that actually change something real about your life. 5 moments where the number on the page stops being just a number and starts rewriting what's actually possible for you. And once you know what they are, you stop measuring yourself against some influencer's staged photo and start measuring yourself against something that actually matters, your own freedom. So let's get into it. The first milestone isn't about getting rich. It's not even close to rich. It's this quiet, unglamorous number that almost nobody talks about, and it's simply having 1 full month of your basic living expenses sitting somewhere safe and liquid. That's it. Rent or mortgage, groceries, utilities, insurance, the basics. Covered for 30 days without touching a paycheck. I want to tell you about a guy I'll call Marcus, because I've talked to a dozen versions of Marcus over the years. Marcus made decent money, not amazing but decent, and yet every single month felt like a tightrope walk because he was living paycheck to paycheck, not because he was broke, but because there was zero space between money comes in and money goes out. 1 late paycheck, 1 surprise car repair, 1 canceled shift, and the whole structure wobbled. He wasn't poor, he was just fragile. And fragility, it turns out, is exhausting in a very specific way. It's the kind of exhausting that doesn't show up on a bank statement. It shows up in how you sleep. Here's the simple breakdown. This first milestone isn't a wealth number. It's a stress number. It's the dollar amount that moves you from reactive to slightly less reactive. From, I hope nothing goes wrong this month, to, okay, something could go wrong and I'd be annoyed, but I wouldn't be in crisis. And why does this matter so much? Because almost every terrible financial decision people make, the high-interest credit card, the payday loan, the impulsive decision to take a job you hate because you need money now, comes from a place of not having air. When you're financially out of breath, you make decisions like someone who's drowning. You grab whatever's closest, not whatever's best. So if you're nowhere near this yet, here's the actionable piece. Don't try to save an emergency fund and invest and pay off debt all at once, because that's how people burn out and quit everything by February. Pick 1 target, 1 month of basic expenses, and automate a small, almost boring amount toward it every single paycheck. It doesn't need to be exciting. It needs to be automatic, because willpower is unreliable. But a scheduled transfer on payday doesn't care how tired or unmotivated you are. The second milestone is the moment your high-interest consumer debt hits 0. I'm talking credit cards, payday loans, that buy now, pay later thing that seemed so harmless in the checkout line and is now quietly wrecking your month. Not your mortgage, not necessarily your student loans depending on the rate. I mean the debt that's actively working against you every single day it exists. Think about it like this. And I know this metaphor gets used a lot, but it's used a lot because it's just true. High-interest debt is like running on a treadmill that's slowly speeding up. You can be putting in real effort, genuinely working hard, saving here and there, and still feel like you're not moving forward because the treadmill keeps accelerating underneath you. The interest is compounding against you the exact same way your investments would compound for you, except it's silent and it's constant, and it does not care that you had a rough month. I remember hearing from someone, we'll call her Jamie, who told me she had done everything right for 2 years. She'd cut back on eating out, canceled subscriptions, picked up extra shifts, and her net worth barely moved. And when she actually sat down and did the math, she realized almost 40% of every dollar she was earning above her basic bills was going straight to interest payments. Not the principal, just interest. She wasn't lazy. She wasn't bad with money. She was just fighting a treadmill that kept speeding up faster than she could run. This milestone matters because it's the point where your effort finally starts to count. Before this, every dollar you earn is partially a hostage. It's already spoken for by past used decisions. After this, a dollar you earn is fully, actually yours, for the first time in a long time. That's not a small psychological shift. That's enormous. The actionable piece here is simple, even if it's not easy. Attack the highest interest rate first, not the highest balance, not the one that feels worse emotionally, the one that's mathematically bleeding you the most, and, if it's available to you, look into whether consolidating at a lower rate could slow that treadmill down while you work on it. This isn't about shame. Debt happens to smart, capable people all the time. This is about identifying the leak before you try to fill the bucket. And can we just acknowledge, for a second, how much emotional weight gets attached to debt that has nothing to do with the actual math? People feel like their debt says something about their character. It doesn't. Life happens. Medical bills happen, layoffs happen, a wedding you didn't plan to go so over budget happens. The treadmill doesn't care how you got on it. It only cares how fast you get off. And honestly, the fastest way off is usually less about willpower and more about picking the right order to attack things in. Okay, this one is, in my opinion, the most quietly life-changing milestone on this entire list, and it's called the crossover point. This is the moment your investments start earning you more in a year than you're actually able to save from your paycheck. Let that sit for a second because it sounds small, but it's not small at all. Let's say you're able to save, realistically, around $800 a month. That's roughly $9,600 a year of pure effort. Your labor, your time, your discipline converted into savings. Now imagine your portfolio has grown to a point where, in an average year, it earns more than $9,600 just sitting there. Suddenly your money is out earning you. Your money has, in a very real sense, gotten a promotion, a better job than the one you currently have, and it never calls in sick, never asks for a raise, and never complains about a difficult boss. This is the moment where compounding stops being this abstract concept you nodded along to in a finance video and becomes something you can actually feel in your own life. Growth starts contributing more than your own effort does. And once that happens, your job, your literal income from working, starts to matter less and less to your overall trajectory because your money is now the one doing the heavy lifting. Why does this matter so deeply? Because it changes your relationship with your own career. When you're before the crossover point, every financial gain requires you personally to grind harder. A raise, a side hustle, cutting expenses. After the crossover point, a huge portion of your growth happens whether you grind or not. It happens while you sleep, while you're on vacation, while you're binge-watching something you'll regret in the morning. There's a genuine sense of relief that comes with that, almost like you finally have a quiet, reliable partner working alongside you. The actionable takeaway here isn't glamorous, but it's real. Consistency before crossover is everything. because you can't reach the moment where your money out-earns you if you're not steadily feeding that money in the first place. Automate your contributions. Stay invested through the boring years. And there will be boring years, sometimes boring decades, because the crossover point isn't a light switch. It's more like a sunrise. It happens gradually, and then all at once you look up and realize the sky changed. I'll be honest with you, this is the milestone that actually got me interested in all of this in the first place. I remember doing this exact calculation for myself years ago, sitting at my kitchen table with a spreadsheet that was way messier than it needed to be, and just staring at it for a solid minute because the math didn't feel real. It's one thing to be told compounding works. It's a completely different thing to look at your own numbers and realize the machine is already running, quietly, in the background of your life, whether you're paying attention to it or not. The fourth milestone is deeply personal because it's different for every single person watching this, and it's the number where working becomes optional, not because you're retiring necessarily, but because you could walk away from a job tomorrow and be genuinely fine. This isn't about being able to buy a private island. It's about the specific, quiet freedom of sitting in a meeting where your boss says something unreasonable. And instead of that familiar tightness in your stomach, that fear response, you just feel calm, because you know somewhere in the back of your mind that this job is a choice, not a cage. I think about a guy named Derek who reached out after one of these videos, and he described it perfectly. He said the moment he crossed this threshold, nothing about his daily life actually changed. Same job, same commute, same slightly annoying coworker who microwaves fish in the break room. But something internal shifted completely. He said, "I used to need this job, now I just have it." And that tiny linguistic shift, from need to have, is basically the entire emotional core of this milestone. This matters because so much of our stress isn't really about money at all. It's about feeling trapped. And feeling trapped changes how you show up everywhere. It changes how you negotiate, how you speak up in meetings, whether you tolerate being disrespected, whether you take a risk on a new opportunity. Financial independence, even partial independence, is really just leverage in disguise. The actionable step here is to actually calculate your specific number based on your actual expenses, not some generic internet formula, because your version of enough is completely different from mine, and it's different from the guy with the rented Lamborghini too. He might need way more than you'd think, honestly, given how these things usually work. Sit down, get honest about what your real baseline lifestyle costs, and reverse engineer from there. That number becomes your personal North Star. And here's a small aside, because I think it's worth saying out loud. This number is not the same thing as rich. You can hit your choice number on a fairly modest income if your expenses are modest too. And you can be making an enormous salary and still be nowhere close, if your lifestyle keeps expanding right alongside your paycheck. I've talked to teachers who got there faster than tech executives. It's not about how much you make. It's about the gap between what you make and what you actually need, and how deliberately you protect that gap. And the fifth milestone, the one people talk about the least, but that I think matters the most emotionally, is the moment your financial decisions stop being just about you and start becoming about the people who come after you. This is the point where you're not just building security for yourself, you're actually shifting the starting line for your kids, your grandkids, maybe even for a cause or a community you care about. It's the difference between climbing a mountain and building a trail that other people get to walk on after you're gone. I think about my own grandmother sometimes. She never had much, worked incredibly hard her entire life, and one of the things she used to say was, "I don't need to leave you money. I just don't want to leave you my problems." And there's something so quietly profound in that. This milestone isn't really about generational wealth in the flashy sense you see online, trust funds and inheritances and all that. It's about generational relief. It's about someone after you not inheriting your stress, your debt, your financial patterns of scarcity and panic. This matters because money, whether we like it or not, is generational in both directions. You likely inherited some financial habits, some fears, maybe some patterns of scarcity or excess from the people who raised you, whether they meant to pass them down or not. And you get a chance, a genuine chance, to be the person where that pattern shifts. That's not a small thing. That's actually kind of beautiful if you sit with it. The actionable piece here is less about a specific dollar figure and more about intention. Start thinking now, even if this milestone feels decades away, about what you actually want to pass down. Not just assets, but habits, conversations, financial literacy itself, because the healthiest inheritance isn't a number on a page. It's a mindset that doesn't require the number to feel secure. So look, if you zoom out on all 5 of these, you'll notice something kind of interesting. Only one of them, really, is about a specific dollar amount that fluctuates based on your actual life. The rest are about a feeling, a shift, a change in how safe and free you feel moving through the world. And I think that's the actual secret nobody tells you about net worth. It was never really about the number. It was always about what the number lets you stop worrying about. So here's what I'd leave you with. You don't need to hit all 5 of these tomorrow, or this year, or honestly even this decade. Nobody does it all at once, and anyone telling you otherwise is probably selling something. What you need is to know where you're standing right now on this list today. Because clarity, more than any specific number, is what actually calms that midnight, anxious math. Figure out which milestone you're working toward next. Take one small, boring, automatic step toward it this week, and let that be enough for now. That's genuinely how it's done. Not through some dramatic, overnight transformation, but through 1,000 quiet, boring Tuesdays that eventually add up to a completely different life than the one you're currently living. Now, if you found this valuable, make sure to press that like button, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to this channel. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.